Hello and welcome, my lovely bookhos, to another wonderful meander into costuming. And this one's just going to be short and off the cuff because I didn't want to have to record and edit a whole video basically about this because it's kind of existing already. And it's January 8th, and I wanted people to start on this as soon as they wanted to. So, without further ado, as my computer slightly freezes because that's the kind of world I'm living in, welcome and announcing the timeline and to-do list for the 2022 Regency Sew Along. Last year I hosted one, I think the year before I hosted a more informal one, and now I'm hosting once again a sew along because people got really inspired and excited about historical costuming, specifically Regency costuming, after the Bridgerton release from Netflix last year. And, I think that there's been a lot of conversation in the historical costume community over the quote accuracy of that. And I think that that doesn't really matter because I think if you're more focused on the accuracy of those costumes, you're missing the point, which was that entire series got people really excited and really motivated and inspired to do stuff in costuming. So, without further ado, let me go over the fun things about this sew along. So, first of all, what's a sew along? Sew along is just I have a timeline of things and you can participate as you want, as needed throughout this timeline. It's also, once you're in this group, and I'll talk about the Facebook group, but once you're in the Facebook group, it's kind of just like whatever you want. Just like you can be there and you can do it like in 6 months. It doesn't really matter. The kind of sew along aspect of it with a more timeline based thing is mostly for people who are trying to participate and get feedback. So if you want a lot of feedback, I'd say the thing would be to kind of start now getting involved in it. And if you don't want feedback and you just want to do your own thing, you don't have to participate during this timeline. That's fine. But you're basically going to be presented with a timeline that I'll talk about in a second. And then you can go from there and you can be like, hey, I only need to make some of these things on this list or all of these things, but I don't have the budget for maybe all the things. So this time I'm just going to do these things. It's fine. You just join the party and you sew as you can. There will be, I'm going to host probably bi-weekly sew along chats and stuff in the group for this. So stay tuned for that. Anyway, how do you participate? Basically, you can go on Facebook and there is a Facebook group called Bridgerton Inspired Regency Costuming Haters Need Not Apply. And I'll pop that in the chat. How about that? Here it is. Here it is. And basically, this was inspired because historical costuming folks get really excited about wanting new people in the community, but there was also a lot of gatekeeping around really being judgmental over the vision of the Bridgerton costumes, which there was vision, and there was a lot of thought put into that and a lot of research into why it was not historical. But hello, hi, welcome, thank you for being here. Basically, the sew along takes place in this group, but also I know people aren't necessarily on Facebook. So if you want to just take part in it via using the hashtag on Instagram or whatever, we can totally do that too. If there's enough interest, I'm totally down to open a Discord server for this, but I already have a lot of Discords that I'm in. So I'm like, I don't know if that's just more like extra stuff for people to deal with. But I definitely want it to be fun and accessible. So if folks do really want Discord, let me know and I will make that happen. Totally down for that. But most of it is going to take place in this Facebook group. I will say too, in the Facebook group, because it's been there for multiple years of this so long, there's actually a ton of resources there around people helping with fit issues and also answering tons of questions about patterns. And since there are a bunch of people in there already, there are 460 people in that group and they're all levels of costuming. And so there's going to be people who can really help you. So if you're like, hey, I've never used this pattern or I've never done this one thing, they're totally there to help you. Or if you're like, hey, I found this museum piece, need more info, there's people there who can really deep dive. So I will say that's a benefit of being in the Facebook group. But as my computer freezes slightly, I am very aware that not everyone is down with Facebook anymore. So I just wanted to be clear that also why I'm putting a video here on YouTube. It is open to however you want to participate. I will try to post, maybe I'll do more lives and do a couple of YouTube lives as the months go on with me showing you the things that I'm making or working on or whatever. Cool. So there's a link to a group. you can totally hang out there, ask questions there. There's no such thing as a dumb question. Like really, like all levels are welcome for this because I want newbies to have folks who can answer those questions. Like if you are really experienced in costuming and you don't necessarily want to participate, that's totally fine. Like if you don't want to make something, but I do highly encourage if you do have those time to give feedback to folks to definitely take part in this because it's so helpful and so empowering for people who are coming into this with like no skills and everything, or very little skills, or just they feel really self-conscious about it. Cool. So ways you can participate: either you're joining in on the sew along part, you're just joining in to watch because maybe you're scared to like deep dive, or maybe you're a pro, you don't have time to sew new things, but you want to give your feedback and you want to help folks. And I think like that's totally valid as well. Um, the other ways you can support sewists, I will say in the Facebook group, there's like a little mentorship tab that I set up so that like hopefully people, if you want to like mentor people more officially one-on-one, that is an option for folks. The other thing, I mentioned giving feedback, but the other thing that I think is really, really crucial, if you have costume items or you want to de-stash or whatever, that is a way that you can help new costumers. And I hope that you will use this so long to do that if that's something that you want to do. Thank you. Thank you. As I heart your comments. Thank you for being here. But yeah, if you want to participate that way and just be like, I don't want to sew new things, but I do want to donate something, or even like if there's a costumer that is in any of the stuff and it's like, hey, this is my dream thing, but I don't have the funds to make it, and you do have funds to help or you have supplies to help, those are ways that you can support and help new sewists. So just think of it in those terms. You don't have to do the sew long just to be doing the sewing. You can support and cultivate new talent. Some community rules. So because this is specifically inspired by, Bridgerton, which was like, we're breaking the rules, aka like we're gonna have a little bit more fun. We're going to embrace some choices. I think the first thing that you need to really remember if you're participating and you're released to historical costume spaces that are much more of like accuracy based is that this is 100% based on a fictional space, a fictional world, a fantasy world, if you will. And that's fine. I think there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I love that Bridgerton is in a fantasy world. Most romances are. But I think the big thing is remembering that because of that, other people in that space are not going to be necessarily making costumes up to maybe your personal standards. But I will say too, if you just want to make some fantastical, wonderful mashup thing, this is the place for you. We're not going to have judgment here. Like, this is supposed to be a judgment-free space where we are exploring our creativity and just having fun and not having pressure about like making things 100% accurate and historical. And you don't have to hand sew everything or flat fell everything. You can just enjoy yourself. I really want this to be an experience to empower, especially new sewists that were inspired by things we're seeing like Bridgerton or any other Regency stuff, because we're going to have more Regency things coming from Sandoton to the Persuasion on Netflix. And I just want people to feel empowered to take part in this community in a way that I feel like, when I first started, I know that so much of the things that I was seeing, everything was perfect, everything was handmade, everything was silk. And the beautiful thing I want to remind people about Bridgerton is that not everything is like that. And I think that is what like really has inspired a lot of people to feel like this is more attainable for them. So keep that in mind. And I will show you some of the horrific fabrics that I'm going to be using for this in a second. And I hope that you feel as inspired. Anyway, what was I saying? Rambling life. Oh, community rules. So obviously too, because this is one of my groups, we are not going to be racist here. In fact, we're going to be the opposite. We're going to be anti-racist here. And I know that because we are doing work around an era, even in a fantastical time around an era, because Bridgerton is not, it's all made up. Those people didn't exist. Except for like the Queen. We can delve into that at some point later, but not today because it's a weekend and I don't want to have to deal with explaining history to people. Anyway, because there are going to be some actual things around history that might become like a discussion around how race and everything existed, we need to be really cautious and consider about our privilege in our spaces that we're in. And I'd say that too, as a reminder around the accuracy kind of people who want to enforce that to other people. I think that like reminding yourself that like other people are going to want to make the costumes they want to make. Obviously there's going to be no like being racist and being like, well, actually people would have been wearing this, and it's like, no, that's not going to happen in this group. You're not going to be like that. if you're going to be talking about historical, like, how people were treated, how non-white people were treated, or, like, honestly, like, even, like, sexism things or anti-Semitic things, like, I don't understand why, A, those have any place in this so long, but also, like, if for some reason, like, it does have something to do with something that you're talking about because you wanna really talk about, like, your identity in that era, if someone's talking about that, their identity in the era and, like, what that would mean and, like, trying to have a deep conversation that's not, like, hurtful and harmful to other people, I encourage you to make sure that you are also not hurtful and harmful when you interact with them. Really think about how we are contextualizing ourselves because this is supposed to be a so long, but yes, we are still going to be existing and understanding the privilege of the spaces we're in. So that's a complicated way of saying a lot of things, but basically, like, be really considerate and intentional. Like, if you are making the costumes of, like, somebody you're recreating costume, let's say, from, like, a museum piece, like a portrait, and those people happen to be enslavers, that's something that's really problematic, and I highly encourage you not to do that. Like, really, truly take the idea of this being a fantastical space because it's Bridgerton, it's Regency, it's kind of mashup-y, and it's embracing creativity. Don't do that. Please don't do that. Like, just be really considerate about, like, "Hey, what is the thing that I'm putting out into the world? Am I being intentional with it?" Probably not if you're gonna, like, do that. So, yeah, also, if you're arranging meetups around this thing, I also highly encourage, like, don't go to a plantation. Don't, like, go to sites of trauma, with your attire that you're making from this. Please also, like, if you're just like, "I really wanna show people all the stuff that I've, like, worn this to," if you've worn this to problematic spaces, if you wanna show examples of, like, the work you've done, and you're like, "Hey, this is, like, the pattern I used," be really considerate. Like, are you sharing photos of, like, being at a problematic location? Probably you shouldn't do that. Anyway, all that to say, we wanna be really intentional in how we're talking and framing race in the Regency, especially because we are talking about not just historical Regency. I wrote a whole essay about this. I don't know why I didn't contextualize this first, but in a fantastical space, which is Regency romance. Regency romance is a subgenre of the romance genre. There is a lot of bad history. I should link out to the essay I actually wrote about this article. But basically, Georgia Hare, problematic white woman who really was the kind of foundational work for Regency romance. It's a lot of where we get a lot of people are inspired by her and literally use some of her research. But she was anti-Semitic and also racist. So know that there are going to be different layers of problematic things that Bridgerton is going to be dealing with because that genre is dealing with it and that era is dealing with it. So all that to say, please be intentional with how we are thinking and talking about things in this era and in the Regency romance space because again, Regency romance is set in the Regency era, but it's written by more modern people and they are bringing um their own bias potentially to it or their own feelings to the table. I will say there are a lot of newer writers who are really unpacking a lot more things. A lot of writers of color in Regency romance genre who are going to be owning a different narrative than I think we've traditionally seen. But that's a different story. I will talk about romance a different day. Anyway, on topic. No hate speech, no bullying. Again, this goes into like the no racism, no sexism, no fat phobia. Please be considerate of people that you are talking to. If you are doing something that's harmful, do not participate in this. Um, Hopefully, that makes people who are afraid of that stuff happening, since that is a thing that can happen in the costuming space. I hope it makes you comfortable knowing that like that is really what I want to set out to do, make this a comfortable space for marginalized folks because I think a lot of places don't center y'all, and I want this to be what that's about. Definitely try to like stay a little on topic in the Facebook group, but like, I know we're gonna kind of deviate sometimes, but try to stay on like the kind of sewing and crafting and creation part of this. Leave historical hate speech behind. It's adjacent to the earlier topic of historical intention, but really be intentional. There is a J slur used in Jane Austen work. I know Jane Austen is very close to Bridgerton. There's an incontrovertible link between her work in Regency romance and Bridgerton. And I just want to remind you that like there are going to be things that we are reading sometimes in text or we're seeing in museum archives itself that we should be really thinking about how we are sharing that and if we should even be putting that into our work and how we're contextualizing it in our work. Yes, and then also, again, reminder, don't accuracy bash people. Don't want to see it. which hopefully comforts the people who are like, I'm worried because I don't want to make something that's 100% accurate. That's fine. Do you? Just have fun. Do whatever. And then don't Darcy bash people, which is my way of saying if you don't like someone's favorite whatever character, please just let it go. Scroll past. That advice should go beyond just Facebook and the so along. If like you don't like someone's favorite something, you can just let it go. Anyway, what else? Those are community rules. And then we talked about accuracy. Everyone's definition is going to be a little different. And so now it is time for me to lay out the timeline for this. Which is to say, I probably should have done this in December since it starts this month in January, but like, here we are. Man, I love coffee. Anyway, Regency so long for 2022, and I have this info posted in a couple places, and I have a blog post that's coming. I haven't finished it yet because my draft didn't save the other day, and I just like gave up on life and decided to just deal with that another day. But it's coming. But this is posted in a couple other places, including the Bridgerton group on Facebook. But basically, January is your prepping month. So you are brainstorming. You're making a Pinterest board. Pinterest boards are my favorite research, costume, inspo things. And one day I will make a video about this. Reconnecting. Why is my connection unstable? Am I connected? It says I'm reconnecting. This is rude. Can anyone hear me? Is it gone? Is it gone forever? Because my internet connection's terrible? Okay, you hear me. On the back end, it's like, you need to reconnect. Listen, this isn't dial-up. I don't need to reconnect. Whatever. Carrying on. January is prepping, brainstorming, make those patterning choices, ask questions about patternings, ask questions about fabrics, get your notions, get those fabrics, measure yourself, and cut out the pattern or the muslin that you want to do. February is foundations. So that's if you don't have kind of that foundational stuff like the undergarments, that's a time where you can either talk about stuff in the group again, like ask people like what you can invest in, whether it's buying a pre-made thing or making your own. You're prepping the fabric, you're winding those bobbins. That's like a whole separate point because winding bobbins is a whole thing that I hate doing. So I like to just do it separately ahead of a project. Make any underpinnings you want or need. Ask for all the feedback you want or help. If you need assistance like researching a certain thing, ask for that as soon as possible. February, we're going to try to wrap up making all the under things if that's what you're doing, your foundational garments. And we're going to also start cutting into the muslin of a garment if you're making a garment item. So March is garment item month where we're focused on that. And it's we're going to get your feedback on a muslin if you made a muslin, which I know in the Regency era, muslin is a fabric that we're actually going to be probably like that people use for the actual end garment, but like in sewing terms, I'm talking about muslin. Why is this so pedantic? I'm talking about muslin in the terms of like the thing that you make ahead, like the like sample, essentially, like the test run. It doesn't have to be made of muslin. I'm laughing at myself because I don't know why I'm being like this. Anyway, it doesn't have to be actually made of muslin. Like you can use like quilting cotton or scrap or whatever you have that makes sense that like is similar to the final fabric you're going to use. I know I use quilting cotton for like some of my muslins in my fashion classes this year. Mock-up. Oh my god. Words have fled me completely this year. Thank you. Thank you everybody dealing with this chaos. Then you're going to make your adjustments in March to any of your muslin things, your mock-up, and then you're going to cut out the fashion fabric. I know it's scary, but after you've done it and you know that it's going to be good, you're going to cut out that fashion fabric, and then you're going to work on your final garment. Then April, that is for finishing your garment. I believe March is when Bridgerton comes back. Maybe, I don't know. But hopefully we can have you in a full garment ready to go to Bridgerton. April, again, it's accessories. So you're finishing any things that you need to on that final garment. If you have interested in March, you're going to think about any accessories that you might need. I love this as a last thing because using scraps from your project to make matching accessories is not only perfect, it's actually so Regency, like people were using any scraps I had to make any beautiful things, whether it's like little rosettes, little flowers that you can add to like your hat or your shoes or whatever. There's prime things that you can be using for this, and then you'll be sharing your final garment in April and like your final outfit and accessories. Or if you finish early, share whatever. So that's the general thing. January prep, Feb foundations, March garment, and then April accessories. This is not limited to traditionally, like historically referred to feminine clothing. And like also remember like how you're talking about gender terms in this sew along because like historically considered like menswear and all those things, just like try to contextualize that because like I know this is a thing that I have to deal with in fashion school too, where it's just like they'll call it menswear, they'll call it like these things that have gender terms. Try to think about other ways you can like contextualize ahead of time so it doesn't you aren't just like making blanket statements about things. So like this is not just meant for just like dresses. This can be anything. This is not just limited to traditionally like women's wear, dresses, things. This is open to all things. Like I'm going to be making a little vest thing. Um, I might do a foray into making like pants. This is open for anything. So don't think it's just limited to Regency dresses. It's open to all things. I'm going to go over some of my weird things that I have on the side table because props. I will be making, one of the things I'll be making is another pair of my red threaded short stays. So my first pair is made from an Emma 2020 promotional bag. So it says handsome, clever, and rich on the little front of it. But I'm going to be making another pair of these. I'm going to be making them because Bridgerton has them in black. I'm going to be making them with some black twill that I have. And I might reinforce it with another black canvas bag that I have because that's the chaos I am. So red threaded, I have the pattern somewhere over here. Red threaded does short stays, and this is how I keep my patterns. So you can buy a digital pattern, download, and do it. I've had great luck with it. For boning, like the only things you really need are like grommets, and then like you have your sturdy fabric, and then you have bias tape or whatever you want to go along the edges, and ribbon, and then any kind of boning. So I use these zip ties for my boning, if that helps anybody feel comfortable about stuff. And then I have this tablecloth that I'm going to be using for a Featherington inspired overdress because like look at it. It's so garish. It's like if key lime pie were having a really bad day. And I can't wait to make something out of this. I think I'm going to be using for this. Look at me, I have patterns ready. That you can't see. There is a Mood Bridgerton dress pattern, and Mood patterns are free. The Mood Society patterns are free to download. You just have to like enter your like email, and therefore you're subscribed to like Mood deals and stuff. I assume, but basically, like then they'll send you the link to the PDF. But there's a Bridgerton pattern, and it's very much a hybrid of the Bridgerton dresses and the Selkie dresses, if I'm being quite honest. So highly recommend if you want that. It obviously is not floor length. You can modify to be floor length, and I probably will. Because I think I'm going to use this for the overdress, this combo. So this will become this, and I might modify this Mood pattern to better fit that, and I'll show y'all how I do that. Should I do it? Or I might just put it on a dress form and hope for the best. But anyway, this is going to become an overdress, a Featherington inspired overdress. And then this pink wool that I used for my Emma 2020 Spencer, I'm going to be using for Louisa has like, Eloise, what am I doing? Words are hard. There's also a Mood PJ set where the camisole can make it into a Regency dress. Yes, there is. There 100% is. Mood also has like a bunch of other little things that you can make minor mods to. like shirts and stuff, and like we can have fun with that. If people are like, I just want to use free patterns to do things. I've used mood patterns for a couple of things, and like they're fairly true to size. In that like they fit me just as good as things that like I make from like big four things because I'm short, so like I still have to modify everything I do. Anyway, I'm gonna be using this to make the little vest, the little double-breasted Regency short vest that she has. So that's gonna be a thing. I'm probably going to be really extra and actually hand pattern that one. Anyway, for accessories too, you don't have to make all of them. You can like thrift things. Like I definitely am somebody who's like, I like to thrift a bunch of my historical stuff. So here we are. You can also just like buy a bonnet or like Target. This is a Target hat. This one that I'm holding, not the one that I'm wearing. This is a Target hat that I keep meaning to trim. And this might be the year that I trim it because like it's a bonnet. So that's an option. Um very much again, this sew along is embracing that like it doesn't just have to be sewing. You can mix and match. You can like make a garment out of like an existing garment, like take a prom dress and just change it up. I have a whole series of Ross to Regency things that I've done where I literally took Ross clothes. My first Regency dress, the one that I've actually worn the most was just Ross clothes that like I added sleeves and a ribbon to, and I was done. So the sew along is not necessarily just sewing, it's, you know, embracing all those things, it's having fun with it, it's encouraging others because it's really fun to make things, even if we don't necessarily have a place to go with them. I know a lot of people are doing this because they're doing the Bridgerton experience as well, and that's totally fine and welcome. Literally, this is just to be like, hey, I want more people to be into this, and I want it to be a good like first experience in costuming that doesn't have as much gatekeeping around accuracy. Because yeah, like I'm not gonna afford a 100% silk dress. Um, if I didn't have one for my wedding, I'm not gonna have one for random costumes I'm gonna wear wherever. Anyway, I digress. I will take any questions that you have, and then I will let you go on with your day. I'm gonna take a sip of coffee, but I want to say thank you for being here. If you're not catching this live, thank you for existing and showing up to my chaotic videos. I want you to notice that, like my background, like I totally had it lined up. And then I opened the YouTube viewer and it wasn't lined up, but it was already live. And then my background was no longer lined up. And that's the kind of life I lead. But do you like this? Like, I'm pretending to be fancy. I'm pretending like I'm in a gothic home and like doorknobs. Anyway, can someone send like the virtual Jane Austen event, like the virtual Jane Con or the this thing? Virtual Gen Con is slightly different. Also, hopefully this will be done before Virtual Gen Con this year. Um, Virtual Gen Con is the year. This is a thing that like we do. I, I have volunteers now, so like I started in 2020. I did it by myself in 2020, and that was terrible. That wasn't fun. I mean, it was a lot of work, but it was just like chaos. But now I have volunteers, and basically virtual Gen Con, and you can look at the videos that are online. There's a YouTube that there's a playlist that has all of last year's, but it is an entirely virtual, entirely free Jane Austen conference. And it again is 100% focused and centered on marginalized voices in the community, and also just being like, hey, this is accessible and equitable. We are literally right now working on setting up our first planning meeting. So if you want to be involved in it, join now. I don't know why I'm singing. But if you want to be involved in the planning, let me know. And let me, while I'm talking, find the link to that Facebook group. There is a Facebook group for this. Again, it's another thing that you do not have to be on Facebook to participate in Virtual Gen Con. There is a Twitter and an Instagram account for it. And you can participate like however you want to. and last year it was entirely on YouTube. I think this year it's gonna also be entirely on YouTube. If you want to be a volunteer to help behind the scenes, right now it's just a Facebook group, but I probably will be pitching us making a Discord server just because Facebook has gone down so many times since then that I'm worried about losing those people and that knowledge. So I don't know, potentially TBD, a Discord for virtual Gen Con. Because I totally understand that everybody's on Facebook, but you can find all that info everywhere. It is basically a multi-day free Jane Austen conference where people can literally submit whatever Jane Austen related thing that you want to talk about and you do a video on. And it's just to encourage, like, hey, you don't have to be some academic. You don't have to be like a published author to be able to talk and be honored with like the time and the energy you spent researching something or making something. And literally it's anything. Like, it doesn't have to just be you reading your like research paper. It's people talking about like recreating costumes. Stitch and Addiction did some, and we have people talking about like their theatrical productions they've done, and like what, like how they wrote it and how they cast and like all these really intentional things. We have people literally we had multiple people talking about tabletop RPGs related to Jane Austen last year, and one of them was literally like a multi-hour romance authors playing a Regency romance RPG, including Tessa Dare, and it was like my favorite thing ever. Like, it was, that is what I want a conference to be. I want to go to all these talks about these various things people love, but then also end the night with watching romance authors play fictional characters flirting with each other and making like scandalous choices. It's on YouTube. You can watch it. But yeah, that is one of my favorite all-time favorite things. Anyway, if we don't have any more questions, I will wrap up. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you for, being a part of my chaos. I definitely, like, all these things that I do are stemmed because I didn't see these existing for me and welcoming me when I joined these communities, whether it was Jane Austen space, for virtual Jane Con, where I didn't see these equitable conferences. And obviously, like, Regency and Jane Austen are close to my heart. I know they're not great, they're not perfect, they are steeped in a lot of colonialist and white supremacist things, but I also know that people have found their voices, like marginalized folks have found their voices and found inspiration through them. And I want to encourage the people who are finding empowerment through those various ways where they're either like finding like a way to actually express their heritage or their life. I want you to feel like you're seen and that you have a space and that you aren't going to be shut down. And also, again, Regency romance is all about the fantasy, the fantastical. It's nothing's real. The Bridgertons aren't real people, and I want people to feel like they can explore that and have fun in that way as well. So, without further ado, I want to say thank you for joining me for my first ever YouTube live. This is going to be fun. I'm excited. I assume this will be archived in some way. We'll find out if Mama knows how to archive stuff at the end. And with that, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. And I'm going to drink coffee and get out of the direct sunlight because I'm like a vampire at this point. I've been inside so much. Anyway, thank you for joining me. And don't forget to make it so. Hey, taglines. I remember them. I try to have them.